Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. We continue the teachings of Alcazar, and we do it in a different form today. Occasionally, dear ones, we'll give you a story, a parable, an allegory. It's exactly what we wish to do now. And when we do it, we always use the same character. And the name is Woe. Woe is not a man or a woman. Woe is a woman. And although genderless, your language does not allow for a genderless person. And so we will call Woe a he for this story. I want to tell you about this man and what happened to him. And we start by examining who he is. Woe is a man who lives in a small town, not as small as the one you're in. He had at least 4 stoplights. But it was a small town and it bordered the forest. Woe didn't feel that he was part of a religion. In fact, early on, he had decided that he didn't like church. Not really. He felt the love and he knew of the integrity of so many of those who would attend, but it just wasn't for him. What was for him was nature. Woe was connected spiritually to the earth. And when others on Sunday went out to worship, Woe would go for a walk. And he realized the sacredness of the valleys and the lakes, of the streams, the animals, the trees, the atmosphere. And this was part of his scenario of worship. He felt that he could feel the land talking to him when he went out. And this is Woe. And so now the stage is set to tell you what happened to this man in this story. So many of you have had vivid dreams, or perhaps borderline vision. And this is what happened to Woe. For when he was at night fast asleep, he had something that could only be called a vision. It was so real, and I'm about to tell you as best I can what he experienced, but everything I tell you won't even be half of it. Woe heard the music. And dear ones, what Woe heard and experienced is undefinable. He heard music that was so perfect and so beautiful that he had never ever experienced anything like it. The pitches and the sonorities were perfect and beautiful. And you'll say, what kind of music was it? And it is not definable. It was not classical. It was not popular. It just was. And it contained all of the instruments that he ever knew about, played perfectly and in sequence. And the melodies that he was hearing were heroic and romantic all at the same time. He couldn't believe it. It was almost as though Woe were in black and white, and suddenly he was hearing color. And in that, it was so amazing that Woe basked in this vision. He couldn't even imagine such a thing in real life. But there it was, and he was hearing it. Then he realized he wasn't hearing it, he was feeling it. And every single cell, the most beautiful music, undefinable, and yet, and like perfect. And Then he woke up. He realized that his pillow was wet. He had been weeping. It was so beautiful. He was in a place that was sacred. He had no idea why. Now, Woe believed that there were signs from Spirit of things to help him in his life. He had experienced this even with the woods that he would go into and have intuitions. And he said, perhaps this is the sign that I should study some music or be part of something. That is indeed the sign. I've never ever had a real interest in performance of music or anything. So Woe went out and discovered synchronistically that there was a town tryout for a choir. And he thought, this is it. I'm supposed to join something. I'm supposed to be part of a choir. And so he went to that, which is the tryout. He was disappointed. They told him in all love and compassion after the tryout, as best as they could, Woe, we cannot take you into this choir. For 3 reasons. Number 1, you can't carry a tune. Number 2, you have no idea of what pitch is. And number 3, your voice sounds like nails on a blackboard. That wasn't it. He didn't know which way to turn, and yet somehow, some way, he realized perhaps this wasn't a call to action in the way he thought. And then it happened yet again. He had asked for this. At some level, he said, Dear Spirit, that was an amazing experience, and I don't know why or what. Please give it to me again. And he got it. He got it in the same way, only this time it lasted even a bit longer. This time, he felt like he was inside it. It would be like a human could stand inside an orchestra. Or if you're not one who enjoys it, to stand inside a guitar while it was being played and feel the strings vibrate with you in such perfection that you would weep in joy in what you were hearing and experiencing. A musician would say it was locked in. It was so perfect. And he stayed in that, and he swooned in that. This was the most amazing experience he had ever had. Ever. And then he woke up again. Spirit, this has to mean something. This has to mean something. You can't take me to a place where I can hear this and enjoy it without it meaning something. Woe normally took the walks into the forest, into the woods, into the meadows, and he looked for some answers there. This was always a place where we'd have good intuition. And he was right. Because his intuition to go into the woods at this point in time for him, which is what he enjoyed and knew, brought him into a clearing, a meadow. The sun was shining, it was beautiful, the grass was extra green. And there, sitting in the meadow, was a beautiful woman. He could tell that she was aged and beautiful. And she was teaching. And she was standing, and all around her were young students. And the students were beautiful. Almost like they all came out of the same school, almost at the same age. And he was quiet for a moment, and he realized something. That he could hear her. No matter what, no matter how far away he was, when he came upon this scene, he could hear her very, very, very clearly. It's almost like the wind was carrying her voice right to his ears. And so he came a little closer, and there was no reaction, and she didn't stop teaching, and the students didn't look around. And so he sat down for a moment. And he listened to her teach. And she said something that triggered him. She said the words, "You were born magnificent." This is not anything that Woe had ever considered or heard before in his life. And humans don't consider themselves magnificent. Humans, even with their best behavior and their most integrity, believe they're adequate. But magnificent? He'd never heard anything like this. Her voice was amazing. He could sit and listen to it for a very long time. And then she turned to him and said, "Whoa, why don't you come closer?" He was astonished that he knew. He was known by her, and the name was known by her. Perhaps that she had been in the town before and knew of Woe. Because Woe was one who had been in the town for a very long time, and he was known for his craft, and he was good at it. He had a nice job. He was happy and sufficient. Maybe they had his name someplace and she'd seen it. I'm sure that was it, he thought. He sat in front of her and she said, "Would you like to ask a question?" And Woe said, "Yes, I would." And she said, "All right, but you have to understand the rules." And here they are. You can ask a question, but I get to ask one back. And so the first question that he asked, "Who are you?" And she answers, she says, "I am a sage. I am a wisdom keeper. I am one who would tell you the truth of any question you would ask. That's who I am. And now, Woe, it's my turn to ask you a question." Woe straightened up and he was ready. He thought he was ready. But the question she asked, he did not expect. She looked at him and said, "Woe, have you heard the music?" Oh, it could have knocked him over. It could have knocked him over. And immediately he blurted out, "How did you know about the music?" And she says, "Whoa, that's another question. And I get to ask you still another." And he said, "Please answer. How did you know about the music?" And she said, "Whoa, every human has the music." And he thought for a moment, wow, that means that every single human could go to that vision, could perhaps experience what he experienced. What a revelation. That's amazing, he said. And she said, "Whoa, are you ready for my question back?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Whoa, what is your statement?" This took him by surprise. Hardly a question, but it was. In question form, she was asking for a statement. What is your statement? Sages are known for being patient, and she was. And there was a great amount of time that passed between her question and finally his answer. Well, he ran through scenarios of integrity, of really what perhaps his statement would be. What is a statement in this particular moment in front of a sage who was giving him information about things he had never heard or knew? He knew he was in front of something old and wise, and she was giving him a chance, and there was a great deal of time. The students said nothing. They never did. They were simply quiet and there at her feet. And finally he got it, what she might have been asking for, and then he knew. And Woe stood up, and he said, "My statement, dear sage, is this. I want more." And she smiled and said, "And so it will be. please come back and I'll teach you more. Woe went home and was elated. Through synchronicity and intuition, he had actually met somebody who could teach. And the teaching, I am magnificent, I was born magnificent, rang in his ears. And that night, it happened again. This time, he could see other things in the music. He saw those who were around him, like the music was happening, perhaps even at work or in the street. And in that, he saw the reaction of other human beings, and they stopped. Cold, they stopped. Everything froze, but they didn't look or even turn toward the music like they weren't really hearing it. But somehow they reacted, they stopped. And there it was again. Music that was somehow romantic and heroic and went somewhere, as they say in music, and the sonorities is defined as the grouping of sounds that created such a feeling that again he wept. This was beautiful. This defined everything that he ever could ask for in the way of beauty. Think of that. Think of yourself, dear ones, in a position where suddenly you were presented with an otherworldly sound that was so perfect and beautiful, you reacted to it, but you couldn't identify it, but it was so beautiful. All you wanted to do was sustain it and have more and more and more. And then it ended. Woe went back. He went back to the sage. And there she was teaching yet again. And he walked in and she started telling him more things. More things. And so he was taught a little more and a little more. And finally, he asked the question, yet again, tell me about the music. And she said these words to him, woe, most humans don't understand. They're like an onion that needs to be peeled, and the things that peel away are the things they were told that are not exactly correct. And as they peel those things, they reveal more than they knew. They peel away things that they were told by others. They peel away old habits. They peel away fears. Until finally they come to a place where there is the core human being. And when they get there, they discover something. They are the music. Woe, what is your statement? And woe said, I want more. I want more. And this is how it went with woe. That he came back to the town he lived, in the village he was in, and he realized he was the music. How could that be? But then he started listening, and he could actually hear those sonorities and those melodies and those things playing in a place that was outside of his dream. In fact, he could hear it so subtly, it made him smile, because every time he heard it, he felt that which was magnificent. And pretty soon, Woe understood. He really did stand inside the guitar. He really did stand inside the orchestra. And he was the music, and he was broadcasting it everywhere he went. And there were some that heard it and some that did not, but all stopped. And they realized Woe had changed. There was a magnificence in him. And wherever he walked, they knew that there was something sacred, beautiful, compassionate in this man. He was different. And pretty soon, some were sitting at his feet, where he started then teaching. What does it mean to know the planet? What does it mean to become magnificent? What does it mean to be one with everything? What does it mean to be bigger than you are? Woe went back to the field, for one more meeting with the sage. One more, just one more meeting. And when he went over the hill into the field that used to be barren, he saw not barren grass where she was teaching, but instead a giant tree was there. And around the tree were beautiful flowers. And Woe realized what had happened, that even the sage was a vision. And what he did next, I want you to remember, because he wandered right into the field where he always sat, and he sat in front of the tree. And he stated to the tree, "I want more." And he could hear the rustling of the leaves and the wind as though it answered him. And Woe sat there being taught by Gaia. We leave Woe here. And I don't have to tell you what this means. That all of you have that onion to peel. And as you do, and the fears come away, and the perceptions that perhaps are not correct come away, and integrity starts to emerge, and you start understanding who you are more and more. You see the light, and you are magnificent. And you understand that magnificence is that image of love of the Creator which you carry with you. And that's why, for some of you in this audience sitting here, have actually had those who are willing to sit at your feet, because you have become the music for them. This is the story for today. It's more than a story, dear ones. It can change your life. And so it is.